Good afternoon, fellow Plexers. This is for everyone running a Synology NAS who is interested in a TRaSH guide setup, but Docker scares them. So this video is going to be broken into two parts. I'm going to show you how to get Portainer installed as a Docker container, and then we'll use Portainer to install Plex, and we can do it with or without hardware acceleration, depending on whether your Plus model Synology NAS has that Intel Celeron processor with an iGPU in it, or a faster AMD processor that unfortunately has no iGPU. We're going to talk about folder structure and atomic moves and why they're important, and we'll get in the first video we'll get Sabnzbd installed, which is the acquisition service, and we'll get Prowlarr installed, which is both a independent search item for Usenet and a Usenet indexer aggregator that can be plugged into Radar, Sonar, and Lidar. So we'll do those three programs in a second video. Right now I want to talk about file structure. So let me go into File Station. So this NAS is my backup repository for my main Synology DS1520 Plus NAS that's running all my regular containers, and it used to run Plex server, but I moved that off the Synology NAS. I moved that to faster hardware running unraid as only a Docker host for Plex channels, DVR, and Tautugly. But all the TRaSH guide containers had to stay on my newer NAS because they have to be local to the media in order to achieve atomic moves. And it's best talking about that now. So this is my structure, which I'll explain in a second. But I want to show you the difference between an atomic move and a regular file transfer. So let me go into my movie sort library folder and into the 4K folder. Let's take a look at this. 83.34 gigabytes. Matter of fact, I'm going to switch to my local file manager for this. So here's the shared folders on that same NAS we're looking at from DSM. Here's the media folder. And here's a sort folder for movie libraries, and the 4K library folder, and this huge movie. Well, let's do this. Let's cut it from here, and let's do a reverse move. Let's say normally it'd be coming from this folder, being renamed and put in the folder it was just in. If I paste it here, it's instantaneous. It's right there. There's no waiting for it. Let's cut it and let's bring it to a different shared folder. The incorrect way is to have separate shared folders for movies, music, TV shows, and incoming data. So if I want to place it in this empty shared folder, paste it, whether I was doing it through Synology DSM or doing it here on my desktop computer, it's going to take forever. One file takes 25 minutes to move. Let's cancel that. Let's refresh. Get rid of this partially copied file. So we'll go back to the normal setup. So in the acquisition folder, Sabnzbd handles bringing this file in, and then one of the R's, in this case Radar, would monitor that, and it would pick it up and it would move and rename it at the same time to the appropriate library folder, which in this case is right here. I'll paste it in and it's just there instantaneous. Now imagine you were bringing in a long-running TV show like Modern Family, Friends, Frasier, something like that. Shows with 10, 11, 12 seasons and 22 episodes per season. Even if you were looking for smaller episode file sizes, just imagine how long you'd be delayed just waiting for a file to move from one shared folder to another. To have everything in one shared folder is the optimum way to set up, and it's fast. And even on an older Synology NAS like this, it's better to have atomic moves. It's a more efficient setup than if you bought a 13th gen i9 as a, let's say, a unraid server to keep media on a Synology NAS. To have these TRaSH guides on that newer 13th gen fast system is still way more inefficient on that powerful system, because you have to transfer files back and forth across the network or across from one shared folder to another. All right, so let's talk about the setup. One shared media folder. If you want to follow this guide exactly, just have it named media, but it's easy to adjust. I strongly suggest these sort folders. Now, music is the odd one out of the bunch. It's not likely you're going to have multiple music folders or music libraries. So this is actually just a music library at that level with some artist names inside it. If you do want multiple music libraries, just name this music-libraries like the rest of them. So what this enables you to do when Radar is set up, it enables you to have multiple root folders. As long as you're not pulling the same movie for two different library folders, you can direct all your main movies into this folder. You can direct any kid movies if you want, little kid movies, into a library specifically for them. If you wanted to sort documentaries out separately, you could do that. Now, most concerts that are on Blu-ray and DVDs are classified as movies under TMDB. So you can use Radar to search for those and deposit that content into its own folder structure. The same thing with stand-up shows. They're usually listed as a movie at TMDB. So you could have a movie-stand-up folder. What you can't do is pull the same movie for two different folder structures. So you can't have one movie come in as a 1080p here and the same movie come in as a 4K copy there. That would require a separate or second instance of Sonar to pull for the 4K movie library. And it's exactly the same with the TV show settings with Sonar. Here's the TV show library sort folder. And this is an example of different types of libraries you could have that Sonar could all pull for. If you wanted Sonar to pull anime content, you could have that go directly to this folder structure. If you wanted to pull kids cartoons, you could name this TV-Kids or just TV-Cartoons, and Sonar could pull that content. While regular episodic content or TV shows went into the right folder. So this would be called root folders in Sonar or Radar. And it just, you can't beat the atomic moves. If you set up without the atomic moves, you're simply set up inefficiently, and your system's going to crawl compared to what it would do with this folder structure. So if you haven't done anything, copy my folder structure. I would suggest not using any uppercase letters or spaces in any of this structure until you return to the actual Plex media structure. Here's my TV show folder, season folder, and episodes, all named normally. And note, there's no period replacing a natural space. There's no underscore. Those are scene release scene names, and they are not Plex compliant. So let's just hammer that point home. So lowercase for the music library, normal case and spaces for the artist folders and the actual songs. Let's step into the music library sort folder. Everything's lowercase, no spaces. You get into the library, and then you return to normal usage for the movie folder and the movie file name. All right, so that's atomic moves. You've got to set up for it. So the first thing you have to do is go to your NAS. Where am I? and you have to go into Package Center and you have to search for and install Container Manager, which is already installed on my NAS. All you want is it running and installed. And once you do, in File Station, you'll see a shared Docker folder. Well, whatever Docker you're creating, you have to create a folder here first, and sometimes a subfolder for some of these, I'm losing a word, configuration folders. Not everyone. So if I wanted to create a Plex container in Portainer, I can name this folder anything I want here. But the information that creates the container has to be aware of what I've named it and matched up. So just follow my instructions, and if you want to try to adapt, you'll have to do it in 2 places with a different name. And most of my guides are going to be based off what I've done the last couple of years with the Marius hosting instructions for either a Portainer or a scheduled task install. But so this is where you get to. You get the Container Manager installed. That will create the Docker shared folder, and you have to create a Docker folder, subfolder, whether you're using a scheduled task or Portainer to create the structure. Okay, so now we're going to go into Control Panel, and I have everything written down here, which is what I'm going to be working off from, and I'll share this in the description for you. Okay, so you go to Task Scheduler. The first thing you want to do is, I have 2 of them. Well, actually, before we even go here, I almost missed a step. Go to Control Panel. This is very important. Go to Notification, if I can find it here. Right here. And you have to set up an email. I'm using something different from the email for my Synology account. I'm sending notifications right to my normal email account. And you have to set that up. And it was just easier to use my Gmail address to get this set up. This is required in order to get notifications for the couple scheduled tasks we have to run of whether it was completed properly or whether it failed. If it fails, the error message will be helpful in getting it to work right. Okay, now we can go to Control Panel, Task Scheduler, and I've got 2 different versions of this. And unfortunately, this is showing my admin account. The password is like 16 septillion years to crack, and I have 2-factor authentication turned on with the Synology app on my phone. So you're not breaking into my NAS unless you steal my phone off my cold dead body. So I just created this. I'm going to go in and edit it, but what you're going to do is create scheduled task user-defined script. And then you just copy these settings. Name this whatever you want. My user ID. You can name it My UID and GID. You're only going to use this once, and then you're going to just save the information from it. And you have to use your admin account. Almost all the other scheduled tasks you could run, it would be root, but this has to be your admin account. So under schedule, just run on the following day. And under task settings, this is where you put your email in. Now, it might be confusing because you saw my Gmail. Synology is going to email this address from my email address I've used to set up in Control Panel. You can't email any address unless you tell Synology an address you're going to mail from. So send run details by email is checked, and this is simply just ID lowercase. Save it. And then you can just go to it. Where is it? Right click and choose run. So while I wait for that, well, I have an email already. So let's open up the email. Now this is the sending email giving me a copy. So my UID is 1026 and the GID is 100. So just put that into a scratch pad so you have it handy. Now if I go to my other account, which opened off screen, well, I haven't received that email yet. But it will be here eventually. Well, let me close that. Okay, so now we're going to install Portainer the same way. And if I go to Container Manager to Containers, you see I have Plex going. So let me edit this. So you're going to just give it a name like install Portainer. It'll be a root user. The schedule is going to be run on the following date and don't do anything else. And then this task setting tab will be send run details by email. And again, use whatever email you want once you're set up to have notifications. And then this is the user defined script. And basically, it's what's going to be, where am I here? It's going to be what's pasted into the description of this video. You're just going to copy and paste that into it. So if you note, the port number is going to be 9000. And the only thing we're defining is the structure we already have created. Container Manager created the Docker shared folder, and we manually created the subfolder Portainer. So you click OK, click OK again, verify with your admin account password, and then you right click and you run it. And then you await the email, and at that point Portainer is running. So if you're brand new to Synology NAS, go to Control Panel and go to, where are we? Go to Network, and this is the IP address of your Synology NAS. So put that in a scratch pad too. So if I go back to my notes, and I just got a blank web page open here. Let's see, what did I do with my notes? So to access Portainer, you just copy this URL in, but be sure to put your own IP address in. So I'll do that here. And because I had it open, it signed, or it just opened up automatically. Normally I sign in if I haven't used it in an hour or so. So at this point, when you first do it, you're going to have to create a password and a username and all that jazz. And once you get done with that, what you should do is you should go to this area and click on the pencil. Give yourself a name instead of just local, and put your IP address of your NAS in. It's the same IP address I use to access it and update your environment. And now you've got Portainer installed. Now the only thing you can't do with Portainer, I'm going to click on just the icon, and now I'm going to go to the container. What you can't do with Portainer is update the Portainer container itself right now. Boy, Portainer is a poor name if you're going to say the word container after it. So this Plex container, if I wanted to update this, I'd simply click on it and I click stop. Once the container successfully stops, I'd click recreate, slide this to on, repull image, and click recreate. So that will update the container to the latest version of Plex if there's a new version out, and it's very simple to do. All right, I'm going to pause the video for a second because I want to look something up and not misinform you. And I'm back. Again, I think the Mario's hosting guides have been fabulous. I just don't think he runs a lot of these services himself, like the Star apps or the TRaSH guide containers, because his path statements put all the data into the Docker container shared folder or the Docker shared folder when they should be in your media shared folder. But I went to him so I can show you how to update. All right, let's check that. I just had an email come in. Oh, so the email told me that my Plex container stopped. So as I was saying, that's not what I want. I want DSM. As I was saying, his path, Mario's hosting's path, puts data inside the Docker container that should be in your media folder, and you don't want that. So to update this Portainer, when that needs updating, I need to go to Container Manager, and you should see under Image, you should see an update available. It would be right in this line, and you can just click Update, and then Portainer will update. Very simple. You have to click Update a couple times, and then you may have to restart the container. Let's see if I can. Let's stop the container. Well, I guess I can't do that here. Let me get tricky. Let me go into Portainer to stop the Portainer container. I can stop it, but I can't start it. And that's the wrong Portainer. If you're not confused, I am. All right, so we'll stop it. And you get a failure right away because it can't monitor itself once it's stopped. All right, so now it shows as not running. And I can simply start it here. So it's a little goofy that you can't use Portainer to update Portainer, but it is what it is. So we're really done with the Synology NAS except for creating folder structure there to create a container, and I can do that with my local file manager on this Linux desktop. So we'll get that prepped to use, and we'll go back to Portainer, and now we're going to install a Plex server. But first, seeing I have a Plex server installed already, let me get rid of it. So I have multiple test servers going on. This is what's running now. Walker 63 DS 1019. Let me put that in my own scratch pad. Okay, so we are going to remove this, then just double check by going up to authorized devices, change to server, and I'm going to get rid of that completely. So that server is no longer associated with my Plex account. You sign into Portainer. We'll go to containers, and I will go into Plex, stop it, and I'll remove it. Okay, so Plex is gone. Let's go back to the Synology NAS. We'll go into Container Manager, into Container, and now you just see Portainer running. And we got a notification that the Plex container stopped, and now it's no longer there. Okay, so you want to be in the stack section, and I have a stack created already that I've named Plex-Marius Hosting because that's my inspiration. So if I go to the editor, you see how I've defined this container. Well, this is basically what you're going to do. You're going to copy everything here and create a stack. Now, the only thing you're going to change are these ID numbers to match what you received in the email. If you're going to have a Synology Plus, if you have a Synology Plus model with an Intel iGPU with a Celeron processor, this line stays. If you don't have it, you remove it. And let me just remove it. And you want to be careful that everything's tabbed over the same way. So this will create Plex without hardware acceleration. That's what we'll do first. So let me get my scratch pad back. All the way down at the bottom. I'm just going to paste this in so I have it handy. So now I'm going to copy all this. I'll cut it actually. And go to the stacks, and I'm going to get rid of this stack. So we'll start completely new. All right, so I'll call this stack Plex. Go to the web editor, paste that back in. And here's the only thing you have to do. I have it already created in my folder structure. The container name Plex, we have to add that to our folder structure. So this is already here. And this is actually my old server. I'm not going to get rid of this. It's just going to overwrite things on top of it, which means when I bring it back in, it'll be fresh. Actually, what the heck? Let's get rid of it. Let's just start totally fresh. Well, I don't want to get rid of that. I still have to create that. Let me get rid of everything below that. So if this is a new Plex server for you, well, why isn't it deleting? It may take a little bit. Well, let's do it this way. Instead of waiting for that to delete, let's create new folder, Plex 1. So now we can go back here and container name, we can change that to 1. All right, now the next important part is if you're not using my media structure, you have to make this work for yourself. So this is going to be the same for everyone. And I have to change this to 1 because I've changed the location or the name of that folder. So this is where your media is at. So everything before the colon is actual physical structure. This is virtual structure. That's what this structure looks like inside the container. So this is my real structure. Volume 1, a shared folder named media, and that will give this Plex container access to everything in that folder. And then everything after the folder, or after the colon, is virtually what is going to be represented as inside the container you're running. So when I look for a library in Plex, I'm going to be looking inside this virtual folder. And that's about it. Just copy everything else as is. It'll be in the description. And go down and deploy the stack. And if we're lucky, we'll have a successful deployment. So this is the new stack, this is the old one. If I now go to containers, you'll see that Plex 1 is starting up. Now we need our IP address. And if I go to my notepad, I've got that prepped for you already. To claim the server, you'll need this. But of course, use your own IP address. And actually, that's not right. It's going to be web. So that's what we'll need. So I'll copy that. And I have to wait until Plex is running healthy. So now if I look for, oh, I'm off screen, I can go through the process of claiming this server. Hit got it. What shall I call this? Here's my history of what I've done before. I'm not sure what to call it. I'm drawing a blank. We just call it demo. Now I've already got a port forwarded on in my router settings for this. I don't remember which one's forwarded. And I have a video about remote access for Plex. It shows you how to reserve the IP address of your Plex server hardware or your Synology NAS. And that's what I think you should do instead of trying to set a static IP address. So go into the router settings and reserve this IP address of your Synology NAS. Maybe reserve the same IP address if you have an HD home run tuner. All right, so let's add a library. I'll add a movie library, call it movies, next, browse for media. And remember how I said everything to the right of the colon setting up the container was virtual structure? Here's that My Plex media, and I didn't mention it at the time, but you want to name it something goofy that'll stick out like a sore thumb. If I had simply named it data or media, that looks like everything else, but this is my alias because it's named something I immediately recognize. Now I see everything in that shared media folder, and I can go to my movie library sort folder structure, and I can point to the main movie library, and as long as I'm seeing what's in there, I'm golden. Now, just in case you haven't watched any other videos, let's set this up for collections. I like collections, but I want at least 2 movies from a collection in the server before the automatic TMDB collection gets created, and I have a video on that too. So let's add a TV show library. The same alias. Now we'll look for the TV library sort folder structure, and the main TV show libraries. Click Add. Now everything I named from FileBot or from Sonar, it's all named from TVDB. So you need to go to the advanced option here for this library and change episode ordering away from the default movie database to the TV database. Sonar names from TVDB. Okay, now that they're in, I can do next. Done. And the web app opens, and you see my whole world here. But if I go to settings, my remote access isn't there. But we're on that new demo server. And if we look down to transcoder, nothing's here. So I'm not going to wait for this. I'm going to shut this container down and show you how to rerun this for hardware acceleration. So back to Portainer, click into it, and I'll simply click stop. So now I'll go to stacks. I'll click on this one that we're working with, editor, and now I have to paste back in that line. So let me get it from my scratch pad. Let me go up to my instructions to see where it belongs. So in this setup, it's right after the volumes. I'm going to click there, add a space, paste it in, and let's just get this right. So see how devices now line up with volumes and environment, and this information lines up there. That's all I have to do. Update the stack, click redeploy image, and redeploy and update. Now I can't switch away from this page until I get the successful message like I just got, because if I clicked away I wouldn't save the changes. Now I can go to containers, and we simply have to wait for Plex to change from starting to running. Now the larger your Plex server gets, when you do an update, it may take a while to start running, but it should even a huge server should be running within 2 or 3 or 4 minutes. The longest I've seen is maybe 6 or 8 or 10 months ago. A Plex update changed the way Plex handled their own database, and there was a database migration. I think on my Unraid server, Plex took about 4 or 5 minutes to be accessible while it was updating the database. Okay, so we're running healthy. Let's go back to my, well, where was I? I was just in a Chrome window and not a Chrome app. So if I refresh this, the server's up, and under the transcoding setting, I now see the Intel HD Graphics 500 iGPU. So if I click Save Changes, I'm all set. So now that iGPU is active. And if you had a DS920, 1520, DS423, DS224, DS720, that's capable of the new hardware acceleration for HEVC. So the minute you hit Save Changes, you see the other options. And I can show you that on my newer Synology NAS and the test server there. That is a UHD Graphics 600 iGPU, and you get these 2 new nice options with it. Okay, so that is Plex server with a Docker container, both with and without hardware acceleration. It's really not that hard. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to install Portainer. So let me bring up my Scratch guide. Okay, so we have to remember, we have to create this structure in the Docker shared folder on the Synology NAS. And this is where it really deviates from the Marius hosting guides. So where are we here? This line is container config information. That belongs inside the Docker shared folder structure. These other three lines belong in my media folder because that enables all those atomic moves. So let's go back to that structure. All right, let's get out of the Docker and into the media shared folder, just named simply. So at the same level that I have my sort folders and my music library, I have a Sabnzbd folder, lowercase. Inside that, I've created three subfolders: complete, incomplete, and watched nzbd. So you need to do the same in your shared media folder. That's the first step. And then once that's done, you need to go back to your Docker shared folder, and we need to create a Sabnzbd folder. All lowercase. Otherwise, the container creation will fail if you don't have this created and you don't have actual structure to point to for all of this. All right, so that's that setup. So we're going to use Portainer and a stack to create this. But let's go through it. This is where the image is being pulled from. This is the name of the container. This is some health stuff. And these are the volumes. So this is the volume for the container config files. That will be the same for everyone. If you're not using my media structure, you have to adapt this. This has to be the shared folder name. This would be the subfolder of Sabnzbd, and complete, incomplete, and watched nzbd, and then everything after the colon is virtual structure. I want it to be easily recognized by me when I'm in any of these containers settings. So instead of just calling this complete like most people would, I'm calling it Sabcomplete. And that way I know it has to do with this virtual folder name that leads back to my real structure. It keeps it clear in my mind. A virtual name for real structure. So you have to make this match if you're not going to recreate my media structure. If you have a shared folder called My Media, this would be My Media. If you're putting Sabnzbd in a folder called Sab, you just use that. But you do need these three subfolders in the Sab folder. Okay, so the port we're going to access it on is 877 at the same IP address of our Synology NAS. So let's copy this much and go back to Portainer. Got too many icons going on. So we'll go back to our stacks, and if you're at the home, just click the icon, click stacks, and now we're going to add a stack, and we'll call this one Sabnzbd. Click on web editor. Well, you don't have to, it's already there, and paste all our jazz in. And then it's simply deploy the stack. Again, you can't switch off from this page until you get an error. Let's see what the error is. Oh, this one needs a config subfolder in the Sabnzbd folder. So this is actually pretty good. Oh, what am I doing here? If I have a little screw up while we're working, so will you, and you'll know how to fix it by looking at what I do to fix it. And now I don't know if that was enough. All right, so I still have this in my flipboard. So let me go to that and read this. Yes, I'm sure. Let me go back to stacks, do this over. Maybe I can figure this out a different way. Oh, so this is my mistake. It's got to be configured just like that. And I should have known that just by looking at this. All right, so now it should work. Deploy the stack. Volume 1 Docker config does not exist. Sabnzbd config. I'm sure it exists. Okay, what are we doing here? Get out of here. You clear all of them. My brain's not working. Feel like I'm missing something. Sabnzbd. Sabnzbd. Oh, this is what I'm doing wrong. Okay, I don't need that there. You're probably telling me already what I was doing wrong. I need that here. Okay, so now I have that structure that matches this. So let's try this again, deploy the stack. Success. So now we have Sabnzbd deployed. Let's go to our scratch pad. And this is how I will access it. And you just put your own IP address for your Synology in that section. And then you follow the setup instructions with starting the wizard, and you just go from there. Remember, I'm not doing the configuration of all these services. I'm just getting them installed for you so that when you configure them, you will have atomic moves based on your good one shared media folder. So now we're off to Prowlarr. Yeah, I'm at the 49, 50 minute mark. So this This is better to be split in two with the three other programs in a separate video, and I'm not quite prepped for them yet. So this is what we're going to copy. And let's learn from my past flub there. We don't need to do much besides have a Prowlarr subfolder in the Docker container. That's the only real structure here. There's nothing else going on. This is virtual, so this should create easier without an issue. So you basically just copy and paste this, and you fill in your own PGID and the PUID number. Oh, and of course, if you're not in New York State, you have to put your own time zone in. And just, I'm not going to Google that right now, but just Google Docker container time zones, and you should be able to come up with a formula for this. So there's not a time zone for every city, but there'll be one for your time zone. And you can just go from there. All right, so we have to create a Prowlarr subfolder in our shared Docker folder. All right, we have that. Let's go to Prowlarr. I'm sorry. Let's go to Portainer. And we'll go to stacks, add a stack, name it Prowlarr, paste in our info, and again, you're using your own PGID and PUID numbers in your own time zone. And I guess you could adjust the port if you want, but I'm not sure how all that works. You'd have to adjust it here too. Let's see. Yep, I've created that structure. So I should be all set. Deploy the stack. And success. So again, let's go back to my scratch pad. This is how you access it. And you just put your own local IP address of your Synology NAS in place of mine. So we'll paste that URL in, and we start with the setup of Prowlarr. So I will have a part 2 that shows how to install Radar, Sonar, and LiDAR. And again, this is mostly for a Usenet/indexer trash guide setup, which means no VPN required. And this stuff just happily exists on your Synology NAS. So before I cut this, let me bring in my Portainer on my DS 1520. And you see I've recently started AdGuard. I haven't got it configured yet for my router. But you see I'm running LiDAR. I'm running NZB Hydra, which isn't part of the automation, but I prefer that as a standalone search engine over Prowlarr. I just let Prowlarr do its thing for the full trash guide setup, but I manually search Usenet with NZB Hydra, because once a search comes in, then you can sort it by keywords, and that's a very nice feature when you're doing things manually. So my Portainer is running, my Prowlarr is running, my Sab is running, and my Sonar is running. I don't use Radar. And I've got TwinGate running on my Synology NAS, so I can remote back in on my laptop or Android phone or Android tablet if I'm out of town visiting the grandkids. I can do everything while I'm away that I can do at home by this remote access, basically. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I'll get back with the rest of the setup next.